Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you are new to me, it's the first time you're seeing my face. Hello, what's up? My name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So it's why you're here, because that's what's gonna be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in. The continued support, I really do appreciate it. So today for you, I have a book review, and this is all on Jade West's Bait. It looks like this. This was a viewer recommendation for me, and so therefore I will be doing a full book review on it. That's part of the deal for my viewer recommendations jar. So if you are interested in a book that will either make you love it, hate it, so scared you run away, or so scared that you're turned the fuck on, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talking about this book. Okay, so Bait by Jade West. As I said, this is a viewer recommendation. This was recommended to me by Ashton over FirstLadyReads, and I'll link her down below. This is a standalone. And a few stats about it before we get into it. We do have a lot of triggers in this book. There are a lot of heavy, dark triggers in this book. This is not a book for the faint of heart. This is for someone who can handle very, very dark triggers and very, lack of a better word, taboo. I hate that word. But lack for a better word, kind of fantasies. So we do have triggers for miscarriage. We have trigger for human burning. We have the loss of a loved one, stalking, exhibitionism, primal play, CNC, and rape fantasy. Just to name some of the big ones. Yeah, this one definitely packs a punch. And because of some of the serious topics in this book, I want to go over a few definitions just so you are aware of what some of these terms mean if you've never encountered these or you've never experienced them before. The first one is primal play. Primal play is the receiving of sexual gratification through primal practices. Primal practices can be anything from ranging from scratching and biting and clawing all the way to hunting and stalking another person, chasing them down, predator-prey ideologies, dominant submissive styles, sadist masochistic tendencies, all very, very consensual, rough play. Everything in it is consensual, and this book tends to lend more towards the hunt and the chase aspect of a primal play style. We also have CNC. If you're not familiar with CNC stands for consensual non-consent. Consensual non-consent is the act and when partners agree to engage in sexual activity and practices as if consent has not been given, but it was given prior. So essentially, they've had a conversation. They say, you have my consent to do this, to act this way, but I am going to act as if I do not want this. I'm going to fight you on it. I'm going to struggle for it. But I want you to overpower me and not listen to what I'm saying. If I'm saying words that normally would mean, stop, I'm hurting, don't do this. This usually involves a safe word, which is a word that you normally wouldn't say during any type of sexual act. It would be kind of an off the wall word. There's no real reason to say it other than it's a big red flashy light. Don't fucking do this, I'm done. That is what CNC is. So there is consent beforehand, but it looks to an outsider that consent has not been given. We also touch on rape fantasy in this book. Actually, we don't touch on it. It is. This is a rape fantasy book. And rape fantasy it involves sexual role-playing of a submissive playing a victim type role and a dominant person playing the aggressor or attacker role in a predetermined environment where they are role-playing as if the attacker is raping the victim. That is the essential bare bones breakdown of a rape fantasy. But everything in it is fully consensual. Consent was given prior to it. Both parties or all parties involved are aware of what is going on, and it is okay because they have previously agreed on it, because it is fantasy. It is fantasy. It is fake. A brief summary of this book is we have Abigail. Abigail is starting over. She has recently gone through some life-threatening trauma. She suffered a very severe miscarriage. And she is living, but she is not thriving. And she knows the peace that she needs to thrive. She needs this fight or flight adrenaline rush. She believes that will kickstart whatever is missing inside of her that was lost when she had her miscarriage. Kick it back into life to value the life that she has, that she was able to hold on to even through this very traumatic experience. We also have Phoenix, who has another name, but he is primarily referred to as Phoenix in the book, so that's how I'm going to refer to him as. We also have Phoenix, who's also suffered his own personal trauma. He witnessed his wife die in a warehouse fire that he was not able to save her from. He witnessed it. He was not there in time to get her. And so his life is kind of out of his control, and he is struggling to hold on to it. He's struggling to be a single father with repercussions from the fire with his child. He's struggling to rebuild his business. He's struggling in his family with his brother and his sister, just all these struggles, and he is losing control. And he needs something that he can control, something he can be one step ahead of, something to consume his kind of troubled mind. So we have both our hero and our heroine who literally have exactly what the other person needs to kind of sexually gratify and revitalize them as a person. And we have them meet through an online chat room hookup sort of area. And through a series of DMs and text messages, they decide to meet up for a kind of one and done session, just to kind of get that injection of adrenaline, of excitement, of fantasy fulfillment, to try to kickstart and jumpstart this this healing process that they both desperately need to live and thrive in their respective worlds. However, after their one and done session, the pull between these two is just too strong to deny. It's too powerful. What they need from each other is too addictive to each other. So this is where our story really kicks off, with this very dark and twisty cat and mouse game where demons are exorcised and romance can really thrive in the ashes of those exorcised demons. That is our summary. But before I get into what worked and what didn't work, on my opinion of this book, I do need to preface this with a personal statement. The summary I gave you is really just the first part of the book. But to really talk about what worked and what didn't work, I will be spoiling this book. So this is not a spoiler-free review. So if you do not want to be spoiled for any more than what you've already seen, please stop now and go read the book and then come back and join me and we can have a discussion about it. But if you don't mind, please feel free to proceed forward. However, I do need to preface this with my own personal statement about this. The topics covered in this book are very dark, but they are very popular fantasies that a lot of people hold, men and women both. They're not talked about a lot because of their serious nature and what they mean to people. However, rape is about power. It is not about sex. It is about power, and anybody who is a victim of a sexual assault, rape, or any type of sexual assault whatsoever, it is not your fault. You did not ask for it. And I really hope that if this is something that's ever happened to you, that you have a circle of people and a circle of friends and loved ones that can help you get through that trauma and get you back to where you need to be as a person to really thrive and exist in the world, and know that this was not your fault. However, rape fantasy is not rape. A lot of people, when they hear it, they automatically think, oh my God, how could you fantasize about something so deplorable and awful? Rape fantasy, unlike rape, is about sex. Rape is about a power dynamic and a struggle and a taking of power, because the rapist feels lesser than what they are and they need to control and abuse and violate. Rape fantasy is not that. It is a fantasy that is power freely given of their own free will in a consensual, non-consent manner. So please, if you're watching this video, don't assume and don't presume to believe that I condone rape, because I don't. It is vile, it is deplorable, it is sick and twisted. But people who have rape fantasies that practice them in a safe, consenting way, you do you, boo. You do you, and you have fun with yourself. There is no kink shaming here. As long as you're consenting and you're having a good time and both parties know what is involved and you're doing it safe and consenting, you have a great fucking time and you exercise your sexual freedom as a person. That's my personal statement. Let's get into what actually works in this fucking book, all right? Because there's a shit ton. Okay, so in this book, we have multiple plots. And I love books that have multiple plots, especially when they are done this well. So we have plot A, we have plot B, and as we're getting plot A and plot B, that is how we are forming plot C to form this amazingly weaved in plot. And once plot C is really set into place, plot A and plot B become almost fading points, because plot A is our hero's story, his backstory, and his healing that he needs. Plot B is our heroine's story and the healing she needs. And them together forms this amazingly beautiful romance between these two. The way this romance saves and heals both of these individuals is just fucking phenomenal, and I loved every single second of it. I just could not get enough of it. When our hero is constantly needing to control and play and feels like he's playing catch up most of the time, him reaching out to our heroine who needs to have the ability to feel alive again, feel that drive and that rush and that adrenaline, because going through her miscarriage, her power was taken away. Her choice was taken away. A life was lost to her, and she needs to take hers back and know that there is something worth living on the other side, that she did not lose her entire self when she lost her child. So when these two forces meet and they can literally heal each other with their own traumas and their own ways, it's just, oh my God, it's so fucking good. It's so good, guys. It's so good. And it's seamless. You don't even see it happening until it's done. And I love that. I love it. It's so, 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 so good. The next point that really works in this book is the type of fantasy that was used. Rape fantasy is, like I said earlier, the role-playing of a victim and an attacker. The victim is taking on the attributes of someone who is fighting for their life, struggling, searching for a way out, fighting at all costs. The attacker is taking on attributes of, I am in control. I am going to be one step ahead of you. I am going to beat you to the punch. I am going to take what I need from you and forget what you need, because I need this. And they are taking on these roles. And these roles are simultaneously helping the other person. And this one and done scene, the very first time that they come together, is amazing. Oh my God. It was hot. It was steamy. It was painful. It was sweaty. It was sexy. It was outside. There was gravel. There was clawing. There was blighting. There was shit talking. I fucking loved every single goddamn dirty second of it. Loved it. Loved it. So good. So fucking good. The hero, in controlling this hunt and deciding all of the aspects of how it was going to be, where she was going to be, the time frame, everything like that, this gave him back that little bit of power that he lost when he lost his wife and felt helpless and couldn't do anything. Having our heroine receive the fear of this chase and not knowing that if this could be it, oh my God, this literally could be it. What the fuck did I just do? I need to fight for my, for my existence. I need to do this. I need to struggle. I need to fight. I need to remind myself that I'm worth protecting and saving, and I'm not a lost cause. Getting that injection of fear, but knowing that she freely gave the power away, it wasn't taken, she freely gave it away, is enlightening to her. And heals these little fractured moments. So this fantasy was literally one of the best fantasies Wes could have used for the two characters that she had created. It was just, it was very, very well done. I very much enjoyed seeing this fantasy used in a sexualized healing way. It was very, very interesting, and I had a great time with it. However, Wes does do something that I really did enjoy. Because we have a rape fantasy, she writes it in a very fantastical way. You can tell that it is fake. You know it is scripted, and you know that both parties have consented ahead of time. But there is one portion in this book where a sexual assault looks like it's going to happen, and it could be like the real thing. And to see our heroine in both scenarios and how she actually reacts, getting that polar opposite juxtaposition view was really, really helpful for making sure that line of fantasy versus real was very black and very white. It gave you that clear vision of, this is fantasy, this is something I have asked for, this is something that I want, I have accepted the consequences of this. This is not welcome, this is not okay, this is bullshit, and I'm gonna fight like tooth and nail, and I'm gonna take you down with me. Like, having both of those scenarios side by side definitely lent itself to the understanding and the acceptance of this rape fantasy in the story, and being it more of a palpable experience, especially if someone is wanting to pick up a book that does show this trigger, but is a little nervous about it. You do see what a real scenario could look like versus what a fake scenario does look like. And I really enjoy that she gave us that. I very much appreciated that little nugget and scene that was thrown in there. I loved the consent in this book. I loved it. I loved the way it was done because it wasn't boring. It was not a boring consent conversation of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, are you okay with this? Da-da-da. It wasn't any of that. It was very fluid. It was very forthcoming with conversation. However, it was only on the part of the male, and that's why I really enjoyed this, because in this fantasy, any legal ramifications of this fantasy was going to be taken on the part of our hero. If this went south, he was the one going fucking down for it. So our author gave him the foresight to get a digital paper trail, essentially, of him giving her multiple times of getting out of this, and visually seeing her coming back each time saying, no, I want this. No, I want this. I want this. This is what I want, in different forms, in different ways. He literally gave her multiple windows and in different verbiage to get out. And in different verbiage, she gave the same answer of, yes, I want this, but in different formats, answering his questions. And so I really like that he had that paper trail, and the author put it in his inner monologue to do it. She had the foresight to know that a reader reading this and how this rape fantasy is actually brought to the light knows that this could have gone south fucking horribly. Like, it could have gone bad. Bad, 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 bad. So to give her character the foresight to say, yeah, I'm fully aware of how bad this could look. No. I'm covering my ass because I have a son, I have a business, I have a family. He's still, with all of the lack of control that he felt he had, he still had the control and the mindset to make sure that he was protected should something go down, because he had other responsibilities outside just his own sexualized nature. And so he was being very responsible with his person and his world, I felt, with this type of consent. And I really, really enjoyed that. I thought that was excellent. I love a good consent conversation. I love when it is very clear cut, it is understandable, and it is also fun and part of the story. And it definitely was made as part of the story in this one, for sure. Phoenix's character, I fucking loved him. I loved him. Not only was he this family man who's trying to rebuild his life after the death of his wife, but he does have this very dark fantasy style life, and he embraces both. Like, he doesn't let one ball fall. He juggles things very, very well, and at the same time, he sees someone who is struggling. He sees it, And he knows, based off of where they meet, that she could find a legit fucking psycho. And this could go seriously sour and bad for her. So he's also a caring character. Yes, he is an aggressive alpha hole because that's what she needs him to be in the fantasy. But in all actuality, he is a squishy little bear of sunshine because he is taking care of her, knowing that this is what I want and this is what I need, and I know I'm going to be the consenting, clear-headed, level-headed one in this. Even though my whole life is going to shit right now, I can help this girl. I can help her and I can protect her and still give her what she needs and get her through her dark period. And I love the generous nature of him. I loved his backbone. I loved his fearlessness. I loved all the character traits of him. I just thought they were fantastic. Thought they were great. I loved him. I loved him. He was definitely a huge, huge bonus to me in this book. I also really loved his sister. His sister is not so much a voice, well, she is a voice of reason in the one area where he can't seem to contain, keep any like self-control in. But I really liked how she accepted him. She knew damn well his sexual infatuation. She knew about it and she played with him with it. She joked with him, but not in a demeaning or derogatory way, but more like a playful sister kind of like, oh, does she like to play in the mud too? Okay, so she's the mud player. Okay, yeah, okay. Cut the crap and tell what you fucking did. Like, I loved her character and how accepting and open she was with her brother and how she wasn't afraid to get in his face about their other brother and say, look, he's my family. You have got to work this shit out. You've got to figure it out or it's going to poison our whole family. And she also stepped into the role of kind of like a pseudo mom for Phoenix's young son who lost his mother in the fire. And she took that role no holds barred, and she did it really, really well. I really enjoyed her character. I thought she was a pleasant experience in the book. She was not someone I expected to see in this book, and I was very glad that I did because I definitely needed an accepting character of this dark nature that people can have. I loved the fact that she was so accepting and so open with it. I love that. I also really enjoyed these subtle Cinderella references. During the one and done scene, she loses her shoes and he keeps them, and then she goes to get them back, and that's how they re-find each other, and he calls her Cinderella. This by no means is a Cinderella retelling, but the fact that her whole life changed with a pair of shoes yet again, Cinderella is proof that a pair of shoes can change your life, and in this instance, a pair of black strappy heels definitely changed her world too, because that's how she found her guy again. So I thought that was really, really interesting. I like that a lot. For as much stuff that worked in this book, as well as this book was written, as well as the dark triggers were handled, there were a few things in this book that I felt didn't work. And one of them was Abigail's character. She, at times I loved, and at times I felt kind of lost with. She had a very like this storyline, very intense in the beginning, very, very intense, and I understood why. And then when we get our one and done, our first time, we get a little bit of infusion of life into her, and then she loses it. It felt like she couldn't hold on to that power that these moments gave her. And so the character started looking like maybe these moments aren't really helping you, because instead of looking like it was something she needed to hold on to power, it started looking almost like a drug. Like she was almost going through withdrawals. And after, there's one time in the book where there's an extended period of time between some of their sessions, an extended period, and she starts to really thrive in that. You see it. You start seeing her become more open and more dynamic with her group of friends, and I really enjoyed that part of her. But then we have another instant, and then she's back to being this kind of needy, I need a hit kind of fixed chick. And so I was wondering for some parts of the book if maybe she was wrong about what she actually needed. This wasn't what she needed, and this was becoming more of a detriment to her than help at times. And I didn't feel like that was what was supposed to be conveyed, but that's what I was seeing with her character, because her character was like this so much. We eventually get her where she needs to be, and I love that, but it was a very, very awkward ride. Phoenix didn't have that. It seemed that his was very much like this the entire time. It was just a nice smooth coast, and hers was all over the fucking place. And I wasn't really the biggest fan of that part. So Abigail's miscarriage, we do learn about it. And we find out when she's telling Phoenix about this backstory that she got pregnant by a man named Steven, who she used to work with. And Steven is married with kids, not married with kids, but now is married with kids. But prior, when they had their affair, he was just married. Well, she gets pregnant and she loses the baby, and that miscarriage was life-threatening to her. And there is a scene that she's telling Phoenix that when she's in the hospital, Steven didn't even come with her, didn't stay with her, didn't make sure that she was okay. He went back to his wife. In this scene, I felt very, very torn, because we are only getting Abigail's side of the story. We're only getting her side of the story, and Phoenix is only hearing her side of the story. And her side of the story is very skewed. She's the one that lived this terrible miscarriage, and she's bitter and she's angry about it. And she's angry at Steven for leaving her. She's angry at Steven for not staying there and helping her through the miscarriage and making sure she was okay, because he did help create the child himself. And he didn't stay through the final thing. And we get Phoenix's reaction of saying he's a douchebag and he's a horrible person and, you know, he's awful, all this other stuff, you know, trying to kind of help build her up. I understood that aggression and that anger. I got it. Steven was a dick, and he's a douchebag for leaving her and at the hospital during the miscarriage, but that is the only reason he's a douchebag. I was torn because I understood the aggression that she had. And if the author had just left it at, he left me at the hospital and didn't even make sure I was okay. If she just kept to the line of discussion on that, I wouldn't have an issue, except she expounds on it to say, and he stayed with his wife and now they have a child of their own. He stayed with her because that was more important than the life I carried. And this is where my problem lies, is because she has her character admit to knowing that he was married. It's not like she wasn't aware. She knew that he was married. And if she would have just left it at the anger at leaving her at the hospital with the miscarriage and not even making sure she was okay and seeing that she was, you know, alive and breathing, I would have understood and I wouldn't have a problem. She didn't. She carried it on to being pissed off that he stayed with his wife. And here's my issue. You knowingly had an affair with a married man. What makes you think he was ever going to be loyal to you when he wasn't even loyal to the person he put a ring on her finger, the person he chose? Should he have stayed with you at the hospital? Yes. Yes, he should have, to make sure that you were okay. But in no way, shape, or form, because you suffered a life-threatening miscarriage, did that deem you worthy for him to stay with you over his wife. Should his wife leave him for what he did? Yes, that bitch should leave him in a fucking heartbeat. No questions asked. But that is not a reason for you to get pissed off that he chose his wife over you after the tie to you no longer existed. And I just didn't really appreciate that, because it was a major portion of the book. It was a very healing moment, and it was a very beautiful moment in the book between these two characters, but I just didn't like that taste, because I just didn't agree with that portion of the book. So it did bother me a lot in that part. The other thing that I felt was a little, not necessarily didn't work in the book, I just was a little uneasy about is the lack of vetting process on behalf of Abigail. Based off of the story that we got prior to her meeting Phoenix, prior to the chat room, the little bit of backstory we have, I don't feel that her character would have been that lackadaisical with her life. There was absolutely no vetting process whatsoever. He asked a question and she answered. That was pretty much it. I would have liked to see maybe some more of the depression that she suffered prior to the conversation, prior to her meeting Phoenix, fleshed out prior to that instead of after, to maybe solidify and kind of justify why she was at the point that she was. Because the lack of vetting in this could have gone bad. This rape fantasy could have gone bad. She could have found a legit fucking psycho on the internet. Could have found one. She got lucky she didn't, but she could have. And she knew that fact. So I don't know. I don't think the level of depression that we already had with her when that happened was enough to justify that complete lack of caring for your human person. The depression you saw after completely justified it, but we got it after the fact. So prior to it, I was just like, this could have gone horribly fucking bad. Damn. I would have liked to know what had happened to her prior to that. I think that those moments should have been flipped. And I felt that the storyline would have made more justifiable sense. But the fact that they weren't made it very, very dramatic and very, very intense and kind of scary at times. I was like, oh my God, this could go so fucking bad. This guy could be like, you know, a mass murderer. Like, you're insane. How it made it very, very dramatic. I just wish they kind of would have been flipped, but I do understand why they weren't. So the spice rating in this book, 4.5 chili peppers, 4.5. Yep, this thing ratcheted up. We have extreme graphic sexual content. Oh my God, it was phenomenal. It was so, so hot. The rape fantasy and how it went about, I've already mentioned that I kind of wished the amount of depression she was suffering would have been brought to the forefront way before the initial meeting, so we would have understood it more. But the fact that it wasn't made that scene super intense because you didn't know. You didn't know if this was just going to be a rape fantasy or this was going to be a straight rape. Like, you didn't know. You had no idea because it could have gone so bad. And it made that very, very intense, which was stimulating and erotic and scary all at the same fucking time, which was great. I loved it. Great times. We also have a pierced hero, which was awesome. So our pierced hero has a full Jacob's ladder and a Prince Albert. If you are not familiar with a Prince Albert, that is a piercing that goes through the urethra and to the underside of the penis. Or it can go to if it's going through the top, it's a reverse Prince Albert. But the underside carriage is the standard. And a Jacob's ladder is a forearm piercing. Multiple forearm piercings, which is a piercing underneath the shaft of the penis through the skin and goes up, forming kind of a ladder. Feel free to look it up online if you'd like, but they're really intense. They're really fucking cool looking, just saying. All right, they're really fucking cool looking. But I loved how this Jacob's ladder became a character in itself. It wasn't just an attribute of our character. It became a measurement almost of their sexual prowess and how their relationship was developing, because in the very first scene, he only is able to give her so many rungs because he's very, very well endowed. And we learn this very, very early based off a picture. He shows her what kind of monster he is, and it is impressive, to say the least. But their first encounter, she can only take him so much. And it's described how many rungs she can take. And as their romance is strengthened and as they get to know each other more and they start to heal more and become more open and start to really be in control of their life and start to thrive in their life, she starts taking more and more rungs. essentially becoming a symbolism of the strength of their relationship, taking more of him, becoming closer to him. And I thought that was fucking dope. I did not see a piercing becoming a fucking character and a measurement scale for this fucking book, but it was, and it was dope. And I was just, once I saw that, I was like, bitch, you did not just make a fucking Jacob's Ladder a measurement of their romance, but she fucking did, and it was dope. All the way. That was fantastic. That was great. I loved that. That was so, so good. And it was so minute because it's not blatantly in your face. It's just these random little lines that he's like, oh, she's taking more. Oh, I can give one more. But if you really look at the moments beforehand and afterhand, each of those scenes, you see the connection stronger than it was before. And I'm just like, oh, it's the rungs. That's the measurement. Holy shit. Because by the end of the book, she's taking it all of the fucking rungs. And I'm just like, oh my God, I love this. I love this so much. It was fantastic. Such a cool fucking element to this story. Oh my God. It was so fucking good. So, Pierced Hero for the fucking win. Just saying. Fan-fucking-tastic. We also have some toys, and these scenes were slightly painful because we do find out that he's extremely well endowed. So to prepare herself, she buys a dildo called the Monster, which is a very, very large dildo. And if you've ever gone to porn shops, you see the abnormally large ones. This is the one we're talking about. And she tries to practice with it to kind of prepare herself, but obviously she can't because it's not the real thing, and it's, you know, she's kind of a little unsteady about it. But we finally get to use it in one of the scenes, and it's God damn, I was in some pain. I felt pain when I read that scene. I was like, damn, that's gotta fucking hurt, because that is not the hole I thought you were gonna use. Ouch. But as painful as that scene was to read, it was fucking hot as fuck. Oh my God. And the windows were open, so we had some voyeuristic tendencies and some exhibitionist tendencies in this book as well. Yeah. 4.5 on the chili pepper scale, people. This thing was fucking awesome. Awesome. This thing brought the sex, it brought the emotion, it brought the fun, it brought the freaky, it brought the dark, it brought the light, it brought the funny, it brought it all. This thing on the spice rating hit every fucking ticked box. Yes. And the only reason why it's only a 4.5 is because a 5 chili pepper is literally, this is all the book's about. This is all about smut. No, this thing had a plot, it had a story, it had heart, it had guts, it had character. This thing was fucking phenomenal. Hands down, this thing was great. I had a great fucking time with this book. My final thoughts. If you can't tell, I really fucking enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this so much that I am picking up more of this author. I think she has definitely a way with storytelling, and I'd love to see what else she can do. I'd love to see what other types of measurement scales she uses. Wink, wink. That was a really bad wink, but yeah, you know what I mean? I would love to see what else she can come up with in her mind, because I feel like she is a dark and twisted genius, and I love it. I love books that use sex in healing formats and in different variations. And I think someone who's looking for sexualized healing novels, you will really appreciate this one. It's a little bit on the darker side, but I think the end result does outweigh the darker points in this book because of how well it was used and how well that dark fantasy was utilized. I thought it was done very, very well. And I think many people who enjoy sexualized healing books would enjoy this. If you can stomach hard to process triggers, and if you're a person that can talk about books that a lot of people feel uncomfortable, or talk about things that people feel uncomfortable talking about, I think you'll enjoy this book. I think you will appreciate the tact and the level of awareness that our author used with some of these dark triggers and these dark topics. I think you will appreciate the way she handled all of them immensely. And for those who are not really able to process these dark triggers and dark storylines, Will you have a hard time with this book? I think you probably will, but she does give you some nuggets to help kind of make some of those things a little bit more palatable and tolerable. So I think this is something that I would not make this an entry level, but I think it's something that you could work your way up to that is kind of maybe like an intermediate for some dark tropes if you're not ready to really quite handle and process those. So definitely not a super, 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 super dark because of some of the things that she's thrown in and the delicate nature that she's used with some of these dark tropes. I think it makes it more of an intermediate. However, if C&C bothers you or rape fantasy bothers you and you just can't get over it, you can't accept it, and you can't look at it through the eyes that this is consent and it is fantasy, don't read this book. If you cannot tolerate rape fantasy and you want nothing to do with it, if you cannot tolerate consensual non-consent, don't read this book because that's what this entirety of this book is. However, if you enjoy those things or you want to see how they can be used in a well-done way, this is something you might want to check out. If you like body modification, aka piercings, I believe you will greatly benefit from this book because that was an interesting use of a Jacob's ladder. I thoroughly enjoyed that symbolism. I enjoyed the tie-in with it. I enjoyed that it wasn't just some stuff that he did to himself. It was meaningful to the story. It had a purpose. It was not just something that was there. It served a purpose and it sold its own story. And I really, really enjoyed that. And if you are turned on by the idea of Prince Alberts and Jacob's ladders, then you're going to have a good fucking time. Yeah, you are. You are, because she gets really, really descriptive about the way it feels going in and coming out and kind of the pull and the cold steel and everything. Yeah, she gets really nitty gritty descriptive. So done really, really well. Highly, highly recommend this if you liked pierced heroes or body modification style romance novels. And my last statement, Ashton, thank you. Thank you for recommending this book to me. I probably would have never picked this up unless maybe I came across my own, but I don't know when I would have ever come across it. But this thing, you were not kidding. This thing was fucking amazing. Thank you so, so much for filling out my book recommendation form and requesting me to read this book, because this thing, I'm pretty sure this one's gonna live. It's gonna live here. It's gonna live here, and it's gonna live some other places too for a long time. This thing was excellent. Thank you so, so much. And to Jade West, if you ever see this, thank you for your story and thank you for your heart and thank you for the guts to tell a story like this. It takes a lot to be able to tell a story with this kind of trigger and this type of fantasy, and thank you for doing such a fan-fucking-tastic job with it. I know I have some opinions about what didn't work, but those are strictly my opinions, but regardless of those, I still loved your book and I cannot wait to pick up anything more from you. So again, thank you for your story and thank you for your heart and your courage. This was phenomenal. All right, guys, that's my review of Jade West's Bait. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see me review. You can fill out my book request, my book viewer recommendation form. It will be linked in the down box below. Go fill that puppy up. It is active, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.